Laura. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. So, I wanted to talk to you today about your experience in landscape photography, why you're a landscape photographer, and how you kind of got into it. So, why don't we start there and find out why are you a landscape photographer?
That's a hard question to answer because it's more of a just a drive. I mean, it's just what I love to do. And I've loved landscape photography since I was young. I at first didn't think I could do photography. I fell in love with David Muir photos. And my dad bought me a camera when I was about 9, and he's this impatient Italian, and he tried to teach me how to use it, and I wasn't getting it, and I just thought I couldn't take photos. So I just kind of gave up until I was in my 40s, and my future husband bought me a camera, and I happened to meet a very patient tour guide on a trip I was on with my new camera, and he sat with me and explained everything and made me learn on manual and worked with me the whole day, and I finally got it. And it's just been something that it's hard to explain. It's just kind of an instinctive thing. I love what I can create out of landscapes.
Awesome. That's a good enough reason to be a landscape photographer.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
why not?
So you said it's this drive. Where do you think that drive comes from? Is it just is that something you've thought about?
It's like, where does creativity come from? I mean, I think it's just something that some of us have inside, and it's a drive to create, and then you find whatever medium is you're most successful in. I mean, some people paint, some people sing and write music, some people are write stories. My creativity comes through a camera. I mean, I could draw a little bit when I was a kid, but when I picked up a camera and realized, oh yeah, I can do this.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just like it all clicked, and I just became obsessed with photography. And man, it was really a turning point in my life. I remember, I was taking my mom to a hike for her 75th birthday to a place called Coyote Butte South, which is,
Yep.
if you don't know it, it's absolutely amazing. And that's where I hired a guide who happened to be a photographer, and he's the one who taught me how to use my camera. And once I got it, all I could think was like, how am I going to get back and do this again? And I was, I was in San Diego at the time, working this absolutely hellacious union job that was beating the crap out of me. And but fortunately, I had a lot of leave, and so all I could do was schedule trips to Utah,
Mhm.
and so I could photograph again. And this guide became a good friend of mine, and we're still friends. And for the last 15 years, we've been meeting up to take photos.
No.
But once I learned how to do it, I just couldn't get enough, and it became obsessive about it. And I took
But
classes.
when was that first image that you captured that this is it, this is what I want to do?
It was probably at the end of that first day when I
Okay.
realized it started coming together, because for me, I'm a visual learner. So if you say things like aperture and f-stop, and it all blends together, I need to be able to see it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
at the end of this day, I started realizing the camera works like an eye. And I'd taken a lot of biology, so I knew how your eye worked.
Yep.
And I like, oh, okay. And shutter speed is the blink, and aperture is the pupil. And I started learning, figuring out depth of field, and this huge world opened up for me. And I just couldn't go into it fast enough. And I took classes at UCSD about on photography for years.
Mhm.
I actually hired a photographer at one point to work with me, and I worked with him for 2 years. And it just, I just kept building it. I just kept trying to see how far I can go. And
Awesome.
yeah.
And how do you connect with a place before you photograph it? Do you rely on instinct, research, or what? Are you,
Um,
in other words, are you a planner or are you more reactive to your?
it's a little bit of both. The
Sure.
photographer I worked with, they had an interesting approach. They would go, and it's more of they had more of a spiritual connection to the landscape, and that's what they encouraged me to do. And for example, I have a photo of they took on my wall, and the way they got to that photo is they visited this place 4 times. And the first 2 or 3 times they didn't take their camera. They just
Right.
explored the area and in every way and were completely present, and things that were barriers to that would be barriers to most people weren't a barrier to them, because this one location is at the edge of a creek, actually a pretty wide and fast creek, and they went across the creek. There's a waterfall. Most people, if they came to this location, would stop at the edge of the creek and say, "Oh, nice, click," and you'd get the shot that everyone
Sure,
sees.
sure.
And this person went into it and left their camera at home deliberately so they'd be in a position to receive, in their words, rather than take a photo. So they went
Right.
just being present, and the photo they took, probably no one else in the world could have taken besides them. And it's taken from the middle of the creek. Most people wouldn't wade into this creek because it's pretty fast, but you can get there.
Yeah.
There's this rock island in the middle, and that's where they took the photo. And I sort of adopted that approach. I mean, there's sometimes I go to a place and I just, if it's new, I'll if it's reasonably close, I'll go hiking and just not bring a camera and just be present and basically see what let things reveal themselves to me.
Yeah.
and and then by this third time or so, then I have the camera, and then I'm in a position to just let things show themselves to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a hell of a lot of sense.
Okay,
I
oh
really like,
good, good.
yeah, no, I really like that approach though of actually visiting without a camera, and it's it's something that I've kind of done accidentally more than purposely. And you go, okay, yeah, this place has really got some potential, and I want to get back with a camera. But
Yeah,
as
yeah, I
I say,
mean,
it's been mostly accidental on my part.
well, a lot of the shots that have turned out really well were accidents on my part, and I just happened to be in the right place, and I had a camera, and I jumped out and took a photo, and it turned out unexpectedly well. I
You
don't know.
meant go
Go
on.
ahead. Let's
Oh
say, are you familiar with Arizona Highways magazine?
no, I can't say I am.
Okay, it's a really pretty well known magazine, and it's famous for having amazing photography.
Hmm.
And I photographed for them for like the last 3.5 years, and I had a it's very demanding. A lot of people want to do it, so it's very
Sure.
hard to get in. And my second photo for the magazine was a cover, and in fact, it's right here. I don't know if you can see that. This photo was taken pretty much when I was just goofing off. It was in the middle of the day, and I just happened to go to a place to see what it was like, and this amazing light happened. I just happened to have a camera handheld, and I just shot, and it wound up on the cover. I mean, that's all the preparation that went into it. No apps, no anything. Just like, oh my god, that's cool. Click. You know.
Yeah, it's wonderful when things like that happen.
Yeah, and when you get into that creative flow with things like where it's happening over and over, it's just a high, like nothing else.
You mentioned the spiritual connection. Is that something that's important to you? And have you ever had that emotional, or it could be emotional as opposed to a spiritual, I guess, sort of feeling when shooting a particular landscape?
Just about everything. And I lived in San Diego for a long time and grew up there. And San Diego is the weather's nice, but it's crowded. There's millions of people live there.
Mhm.
I hated it. And I would want to go to Utah because I love the wide open spaces, and I felt it like nothing else.
Yeah,
And that expanded to the Southwest in general. So as far as a spiritual connection, that's kind of it. I mean, it's more of a feeling of feeling this landscape and being connected to it. And beyond that, it's really hard to, explain more. It's more of a feeling, like
yeah,
I belong here. And I love being alone in this immense landscape and feeling like I couldn't be more insignificant. It's just I've tried to capture that in photos, and it's extremely hard, but
yeah,
that's
yeah.
kind of I guess to me that's a spiritual connection. And the instructor that I worked with, when I met them by accident, I was at a workshop, and they were teaching us to connect with the energy of this canyon we were in, and I'd never thought of taking a photograph like that before. I mean, I'd always been like, okay, we need clouds and it's got to be at sunset so we can have color. I'd never thought about just connecting and being present and letting things reveal themselves to me. And
Sure.
we started off, with meditation exercises and just basically being present. And it was such a different approach than I'd ever had that I said, yeah, I want to work with this person, and and that's kind of what I've been doing ever since. But it was that's well, I say spiritual to me. It's like that connection with your landscape and yourself, and a deeper part of you. And that's about as much. After that, I'm losing my vocabulary because it's more of a feeling. You're after you take, you have the feeling of being connected, then you try and channel that through your camera.
It makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Okay, fabulous.
Do you have a process for setting creative challenges for yourself? Do you have goals? Do you set yourself projects? Or is it just more, okay, I'm going to go here and that's what I'm going to shoot?
It's more, yeah, exactly. It's like, what do I feel like seeing? And then going there and letting the landscape reveal itself to me, and then just going from there and seeing, what can I create? If I can't take I can't take a good photo if I can't feel the place. It
Yeah.
has to be some place I like. If I can't feel it, then forget it. It's not happening. The photos are just going to be crap. So basically, I just just go with my instinct and think, what's calling to me.
Okay. And I'm interested in what you want your viewers to take away. What are you trying to communicate or get across to somebody that might see it? Is there I guess a story you're trying to tell with the images, or is it more
Um,
organic? Just here it
it's
is, off you go.
it's more organic. It's just what wanted to be seen. It's easier if I give an example. So I went to this last year. I went to this one location where I'd photographed before. It was 3 hours away, and there's a certain. It's in the Salt River Canyon on the White Mountain Apache Reservation, which is the most wildest, ruggedest place you've seen. So that attracts me. I love wild, rugged places. And I found a hedgehog cactus that grows on the edge of this cliff out of the river. And so I wanted to go back and photograph it in bloom. So I went there, drove 3 hours, bought a permit, and found my cactus, and it was over for the year. All the blooms were dead. So I thought, okay, well, I've driven 3 hours, I've got several hours of light. And so I thought, what here wants to be seen? So I just wandered around, and just really not really trying to take any photos. I didn't, my camera stayed in my backpack the whole time. I just hiked around and checked things out and looked at viewpoints and just became as much a part of the landscape as I could. And as the sun was setting in this canyon, I saw this strawberry hedgehog cactus, which is bright pink,
Yeah.
down on this ledge, growing on the edge of this ledge. And I thought, I want to that cactus wants me to photograph it. So I figured a way to climb down this cliff, and I was, sitting there was enough spot on the ledge where I could splay my tripod out between my legs out here, and then just squeeze into this spot, and I got this very cool photo. And that's just what wanted to be seen. That was the only photo I took the whole trip,
Wow.
and I drove back home 3 hours. But the photo was worth it. I mean, you look at it and you can feel what it was like to sit on that cliff with this cactus, and
Yeah.
with this huge canyon. And the river is perfect. It's got this great curve that winds away from you, and it
Nice.
leads off into the distance. And that's just what wanted to be seen, and that's what I felt, and I think I managed to channel it that day. So if you see the photo, you'll feel it too. I hope.
Obviously, the environment and I guess conservation of that is
Mhm.
important to you. How do
Yeah.
you see your photography in relation to that sort of communication of that conservation message?
Oh, good question. Just this past summer, I don't know, have you been to Flagstaff?
I can't say I have. I've been to Park City in Utah and a couple of places around there, but I've never been to Arizona myself.
Okay, well, Flagstaff is a mountain town built at the foot of a volcano.
Uh-huh.
and it's extinct, but it's sacred to the 13 tribes, Native American tribes we have here. And there's a ski resort on top of it, which a lot of us hate. And they decided they got permission from the Forest Service to remove 7 acres of mature aspens off this mountain, with a sacred mountain, to put more ski lifts. And they removed an area that was one of the most beautiful trails that's very popular. And when I found out, I was just horrified.
Mm.
So and I happened to have my camera. And so I have lots of photos of this grove before. So I took the after photos of the destruction.
Wow.
And they had all this construction tape saying no entry. So of course I went in. No one was there at the time. It was early in the morning. So I photographed the destruction and I disseminated it to every outlet I could think of. I mean, I put it on Google Maps for this trail. I put it on my Instagram page. I have a space in the gallery in Flagstaff. I printed photos of what the grove used to look like with a protest statement at the bottom,
Yeah.
every outlet you think of. So that's where I see my photography. I mean, I try and show, what these lands look like and why they're important, especially with the current political climate in the US right now. I mean, our vice president stated, gee, there's a lot of land that isn't being used for anything right now, especially in the Southwest. And that attitude, it just appalled me. The land itself has value, just its beauty, in the solitude, in the solace people feel when they're there. Its importance to the tribes, both ancestral tribes and the contemporary tribes. So I see myself using my photography, to preserve what we have,
Yeah.
because we clearly have people now in power that can't feel anything. So if I can make people feel and care about this land, then I think that'll be the greatest gift I could give back.
Yeah. Fantastic. How effective do you think you've been so far with
I
your?
don't know, because a couple of my posts I posted on Instagram, a before shot and then the video of what the grove looked like afterwards, and
Mm.
it got 24,000 views.
Wow.
So and there's a lot of antipathy against the ski resort. So
Yeah.
it just needs, maybe it just needed a little more fire under them. So we can't stop them tearing up that grove, but maybe in the future, maybe we can save some more, because
Yeah.
apparently this grove has been it's been contested for the last 17 years, this project. So if I can forestall the next one, I'll be extremely happy.
Yeah. Sure. Sure. I guess one of the things you mentioned also was the fact that some of these places sacred to the indigenous communities.
Hmm.
And I'm interested in that interplay between photographers that go on those lands and, sometimes help document it with an intent to try and help their message of conservation and so forth. I guess I'm interested in your thoughts on how we can approach those sorts of subjects with some respect and sensitivity, and how do you work with the indigenous people in their land around getting onto their land first off, and then also
Yeah.
working with them in documenting it.
I haven't done much photography on the non-touristy places, but the person I worked with did a lot of travel on the nearby reservations, and this person just basically asked. They'd stop. If there was a house, they'd say, "May I cross your land and do some photography?" And this person said all but 2 times where they told they were allowed to go, but only twice were they told to leave.
Yeah.
I work with a couple of Native American artists in the gallery. And, I just basically, I think it's a privilege to be able to work alongside, the native, the tribes here who've been here for hundreds, some thousands of years, and learn their culture and how things are seen. And, I think when you have that respect, it comes through. Like when I photographed this cactus, I had to get permission. It's just a permit for the but for the to enter the land. But the first time I went there, I'd driven 3 hours and the cactus wasn't in bloom. So I went back to the permit office and, I told them, the person told them, why I wanted to exchange my permit. And the person happened to be a big fan of Arizona highways and she loved the
Right.
photography. So, so she was happy to help me. And when I got my shot, I went back there and gave her a copy of the magazine, the one I showed you, and said, here's a anniversary photography issue. Thank you for helping me. And just
Nice.
showing that respect and appreciation, and it comes through. And does that answer the question?
Yeah, definitely, definitely, definitely.
Okay. I mean, I think if I were to go, a little more deeper, I would have to get to know people that were there in the area where I wanted to photograph, and, get to know them, and let them get to know me and why I want to photograph it. Because, I think there's a lot of resentment from people who just think photographers want to come get a photo, take it, sell it and make money, and that's it. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
want to do that. I would want to benefit them as well. I would, and just if they'll allow me to come and just, see what I can create, I'm happy to give back to them too. And whatever way they would like.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
How do you think landscape photography has changed you as a person?
I've never thought about that. It's certainly given me a sense of peace, and connection. I mean, I never thought about this until now, but I lived in San Diego from the time I was 4. And the more I learned photography in my 40s, the more I hated San Diego because all I saw was, concrete everywhere, 10 lanes of traffic. And
Yeah,
I wanted to be away from that in wide open spaces. And now I live in the mountains. I definitely don't have that nice temperate climate, but I don't care. I like feeling the change of the seasons.
yeah,
I like having space around me. I mean, this is the Flagstaff is the largest contiguous ponderosa pine forest, and
yeah,
to live in the shadow of this ancient volcano, and to be able to live with, you know, Native American tribal members who have been here, for way longer than any white people, and learn the culture and become it's a way of connecting to the land, itself, and this area, and learning what it means to people who are here before me. Really, has, I don't know. See, no, it's hard. It's a feeling I can't really put into words.
sure,
It just
sure.
basically it's a connection to this place. You
Yeah,
know, so, but becoming a landscape photographer has definitely given me an appreciation for nature, untouched and
yeah.
unspoiled. I mean,
It, do you think where you live has shaped not only what you shoot, but how you approach photography, the some of the techniques you use at all?
no, because I already use these techniques. I found my way here because this was a place where I could live, and shoot the way I wanted. I mean,
Sure.
I picked this place for many reasons, but one of the reasons was there was such a wide variety of terrain and environments, and just so many things to shoot. I mean, there's Native American ruins to this side. There's a volcano to that side. There's Sedona and the Red Rocks down below. I mean,
Yep.
I could be here a lifetime and never shoot everything. So
Yeah, yeah.
it was just an endless number of opportunities to create something out of the landscape here.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
What does success look like for you in your photography?
Success looks like being able to do exactly what I want to do and continually striving to do better. I mean, I had a union job for 20 years and I was constantly being told, this is, where you're going, you're in this meeting, you got to be here, we're doing
Yep.
this. And, it was soul sucking. And so for me, success is being able to shoot whatever I want and shoot the way I want, which is why I love Arizona highways. They
Mhm.
don't tell you what to do. They just say, hey, we need a photograph of this over here. And it's up to you to figure out,
It just has to be Arizona.
exactly. And, I got an assignment to shoot a scenic drive, and, I had the article so I could tell what to focus on, but how I did it was up to me.
Sure.
And they don't want to tell you, they want you to create. And so I love that. So
Yeah.
success to me is being able to do that and just, like I said, take the photos I want and then and with no restrictions and
Nice.
uh,
Me through the conversation in your head when you were saying, okay, union job, see you later. Photography,
oh
here
boy.
I come.
Oh boy. Gosh, let's see. I met my friend who taught me photography probably 9 years after I'd been in this job. And as soon as I began to learn landscape photography, I realized, okay, this is what I want to do. But I had to, if I stayed 20 years, I would get a pension and lifetime health care.
Sure.
So I definitely wanted that, especially in the US where we don't have that stuff. So I had to get to this point and then I would be free. So the language in my head was basically it was like doing an Ironman race. I used to do triathlons. I mean, it was
You could
basically
see the
like,
finish line.
yeah, it was just like, and I literally, I literally would calculate the time I had left to retire in my head and figure out where would I be if I was doing, I was a half Ironman triathlete. So I'd say, okay, I'm on mile 17 now. And then, a year later, okay, and now I'm on mile 18 and a half,
Yeah.
of the bike. I've got so many more miles to go. And I would, and it was almost a joke because people would ask me how long until you could retire. And I could just spit out how many years, months, and days just off the top of my head.
At least it
And
wasn't hours and minutes.
yeah, at least it wasn't hours and minutes, but I could say, yeah, 8 years, 4 months, in 26 days. I mean, I could just, and it was basically just, I would, I would plan photography trips. And fortunately, being a union job, I had a lot of time off. And I was taking vacation every other month, and I would just live for these photography trips. And it was just like, get to the next point, get to the next point. I don't know if you've ever run in like a marathon or a half marathon, it's like, okay, mile
Well,
five,
like I
mile
was
six.
run marathons.
Mile six, get to mile seven. You do it one step at a time. You don't think about the whole thing. And so that's what I did. I basically would just say, okay, get to the next trip. And these trips were my lifelines. And I realized, I knew I couldn't make full retirement. I took early retirement. No, great. Just lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah. I realized I would never get to full retirement. I realized I lost my train of thought. What were you just talking about? What was,
Yeah, we were talking about the process of actually thinking about moving to photography from
yeah.
time
Oh,
work.
I had something brilliant I was going to say, and now it just evaporated. I
Well,
hate when that happens.
I know the feeling.
Let's see. I was talking about, oh yeah, when I realized I wasn't going to make full retirement because there was no way I was going to get, I wasn't going to live long enough. I mean,
Sure.
I was having like I was a triathlete with high blood pressure. I mean, how does that happen?
That's not
Um,
good.
no, and it was all from stress. And, and so I wound up retiring, giving early retirement at 7 a.m. on the first day I was eligible. And let's see, what was the point of that? I lost it again. Oh well, maybe it'll come to
Uh,
me.
when did you actually decide, okay, photography is where I'm going, and that point where you said, okay, from
Ah,
here on in,
yeah,
I'm
that's what I'm trying to say. Pretty much the first year that I learned photography, which was 2010. So I had 11 years to get to this magic point of
oh,
getting my pension and getting full health benefits. And just basically I realized I was spending so much trying to get from vacation to vacation so I could get the hell out of work. And I realized maybe I should just instead of escaping from this life, maybe I should get a life I don't need to escape from.
uh-huh.
And so I put this, it took 10 years, this plan of how am I going to get financially free enough so I can leave. And that's basically what I did. I saved money, I paid everything off,
Sure.
and, with this goal. And then while I was simultaneously taking photography lessons, working with an instructor, and then I decided I wanted to shoot for Arizona highways, which was a big if because at the time I was just learning photography. My photography was crap. And here was this amazing magazine that I wanted to get to. So it took a lot of, classes, practice over and over and over again.
Mm.
And basically just that ladder, that process, that I wanted to get to by my 55th birthday, which was the first day I was eligible for early retirement.
Sure.
And I got there. I gave notice at 7 a.m. I had all my financial information, lined up. And I'd been submitting photos to the magazine, never had any used. And they actually brought me on as a contributor 3 weeks after I'd retired, which
Wow.
was totally unexpected. It's just out of the blue, but the timing was just, it couldn't have been better.
I think though that's a great story of sort of seeing a goal in front of you and having that goal to work for, and then putting in all of those hard yards that get you to the point where, okay, now I'm now I'm kind of getting close to where I want to be.
Exactly. And it really had, I really had to sit down and say, okay, what steps are needed to get me there? And there was two big ones. Financially, I had to get out of the golden handcuffs.
Yep.
And then I had to get my photography up to the level where I could actually, submit anything to this magazine. And so I was
Yeah.
working on those simultaneously while trying to tread water and stay in this job, and I did it 20 years in 3 days, but yeah, I got the hell out.
Fantastic. Talk to me a little bit about the gallery. You've mentioned it a couple of times. How did you get involved in that?
I just applied and I got to Flagstaff, and I realized that the magazine, they only use 3% of the photos that are submitted because,
Sure.
they have I have an archive of 125,000 and more coming in. So they don't need a whole lot of photos. So I realized I need something else for as an outlet. So I applied to this gallery because it was a co-op. And
Yep.
you basically just you rent your space, you put in a few hours a month, and then that's your space. You can do what you want with it. And it had a fabulous location. It's right in the middle of downtown, so it's right on the tourist track. But it's also it's multimedia, so you meet a lot of really interesting people. There's fabulous. There's a ton of creatives in Flagstaff.
Yep.
You're working with. There's 40 of us. You're working with people that are just like you. That's where I've got to know. There are a couple of Native American jewelers, and I've got to know them, and and their culture, and it's just been just a fabulous opportunity, and so that's how I got into that. It's just been wonderful.
Fantastic. Have you done any collabs with any of the other artists in the gallery at all?
No, photography doesn't really work. I mean, we have a lot of painters, jewelers, glass makers, woodworkers. Other than photographing, their stuff. I mean, I'm not sure what else, what I could do. I mean, some of the artists have collaborated with each other when the media is compatible, but
Yeah,
the
yeah.
photographers yet. I guess I could get someone to make me a frame, and then but I don't know.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
I guess part of that is, or part of working for yourself is wearing multiple hats. How have you've got to be the chief executive officer, chief marketing officer, chief of everything. How do you deal with balancing all of those activities along with the creative side? Because those things are very much not creative.
Yeah. Well, the beauty of having a pension is you don't have to give a shit about those things. You can just do whatever you want. I mean, it was really important to me to get that pension because it'd be
Sure.
freedom. It would be money that would come in no matter what. And then I could create, and it wouldn't matter if I sold anything because I'm not doing it for money. I'm doing it for myself.
Yeah, yeah,
If you're in the business of photography, if that, then you have a problem. You're going to have to do things that are, you may not want to, but they sell. You may have to shoot weddings, even though you really rather shoot street scenes.
yeah.
And fortunately, having an independent source of money set me free from that. So for the most part, I don't even have a business card.
Okay.
I let the photography speak for itself, and I let people find me. I don't advertise. I don't go out of my way to put my name out there. I just let people find me, and they have. I mean, I had a commission for a real estate agent last year who just wanted some landscapes to send to her clients. So okay, I'll shoot some, and she paid me nicely for that, and I didn't have to do a thing. She found me.
Nice. Yeah.
And I have no idea who's out there, but someone else will find me too. And so it's really nice to be able to let that business end go and not worry about it. Yeah, very nice. Absolutely nice. But I said that's why it was important to me. A lot of friends asked me when I was like 5 years from retirement, my photography was finally getting good. a lot of people ask me, why don't you just leave now? It's like, no, I need to get this pension in my health care, because once that's secure, I don't have to worry about it. Then I'm
Yeah,
free. I mean, if I don't feel like photographing anything, I don't. I mean, I can wait until the inspiration hits,
sure, sure.
because there's no need. So
Have you got a favorite location that just keeps calling you back?
I do, but I'm not telling anybody about it.
That's okay.
uh,
You don't have to be precise. You can be very general.
I love northern
Over
Arizona.
there.
Yeah, over there behind me is this amazing place. Yeah, I actually go back to a lot of places over and over again, because it's changing so much. You don't think of a landscape as being, has been changing a lot, but it does, and you
Hmm.
can't go back and shoot the same thing. And so I'm always checking what's blooming here, what's doing over here. Is there, was there a good rain year? There might be a reflection pond,
Yeah.
and so I'm constantly going back to various places just to see what it's like in different seasons, times of day. So
I like the fact that even valley to valley, you go over a rise and the vegetation is completely different to the valley that you've just left.
absolutely.
Those sorts of changes just blow my mind, and I find that really stimulating creatively because you can
Oh
go, okay,
yeah,
well, I just have to get over that rise, and I know I'm going to see something different.
especially in Arizona, because you have great diversity of environment. You have, like, I'm up in the pine forest. There isn't a cactus anywhere.
Yeah,
You go
yeah.
down off the rim here, what you drop 2,000 feet, and then you're in a different environment. There's cactus, there's high desert, there's low desert. It's say, like you said, you go into a
And the
different valley.
vegetation around the creeks and rivers is completely different to
Yeah,
on the sides of the valley as you come into it. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, you go around a corner and you're in different weather. So there's just so much variety. You have to keep going out to keep up with what's going on, and you can't, which honestly I think is fabulous, because it just means there's an endless opportunity of things to explore.
absolutely. Yeah.
So
What's one moment in your photography where you truly felt awe, like the landscape reminded you of how small we are in the grand scheme of things?
every time I go out, honestly,
Okay.
I mean, you can find anywhere. And it's funny, I just read a study that said if you want to boost your mood, go out every morning on a walk with a sense of finding something
Mm.
awesome. And it can be in little things, it can be in big things, but just being open to feeling that,
Yeah.
is just what you live for as a photographer. And, sometimes you'll be in the most ordinary places and something amazing will happen. One time I hadn't slept well. It was during monsoon season. So I thought, well, I'll just drive out to this flower field
Hmm.
and see what's happening, because I couldn't sleep anyways. So I drove out there, and this storm came in, and it blocked out the sun except for one edge. I knew I'd have about 10 minutes. The sun came under and just lit up the volcano. We call it the mountain in Flagstaff. Lit up the underside of the clouds. Right, I had two rainbows. If that wasn't enough, when they faded, the sun came through again, and this incredible double rainbow that framed the mountain, happened. And I got a photograph of it. But I was awestruck, and I realized I'm the only person in the world that just saw what just happened,
Yeah.
because there's no one around me. You can't see the rainbow unless you're in this spot I was in.
Yeah. It doesn't line
And
up unless
no, it
you.
doesn't line up. Like, I could see there's a highway below me and trucks were going by, and no one could see the double rainbow. And it was absolutely spectacular. And I
Fantastic.
was just awestruck, awestruck that I was just there. I just happened to be there just because I couldn't sleep,
Mm.
you know.
How about bad experiences? Have you had any horror stories from your photography?
Not graphically. I've had horror stories from people I've met. I mean, I try and avoid
People are the
people.
worst, I think.
I hate people. I mean, I try and go, where I don't find people, but occasionally I come across them. I just came across this absolutely awful bunch. I mean, they accuse me of running over their dog. I've got this forerunner with tires that are, go up 3 feet, and the dog was this big, and and the dog was fine. I'm like, are you kidding me? If I'd run over the dog, it'd be flat. This dog is. They're trying to tell me I ran over the dog. No, but I was by myself. And it's like, and there was four of them. It's like that was just, they're all swearing at me and this and the other. That was a kind of a horror story, but it had a happy ending. The dog was fine. Yeah, so that's probably the worst thing that's happened to me so far.
I asked earlier about how photography's changed you. How do you think it's changed your relationship with the natural world?
It made me more in tune with it. I mean, I realized when I was in my union job, I was working at such a pace that I had lost touch with my own body, if you can believe that. I started doing yoga, and a lot of yoga is doing breath work and slowing things down and seeing how you feel. I realized I didn't know how I felt. I was living on my sympathetic nervous system in fight or flight reaction 18 hours a day. I
Yeah.
didn't know how I felt. And I think that's why I became attracted to the person I wound up studying with, because they were all about slowing down and connecting. And now that I'm slowed down permanently, I connect really well with the landscape
Mm.
and seeing nature as a cycle. And we're all part of that cycle. And just seeing it as a continuum, I think that's photography has basically brought me to that.
Yeah, yeah. I'm interested now in when you get back from a shoot, are you one to leave things to marinate, or are you straight into editing and you've just got to get into what you've done and at least see what you've
I tend to leave things to marinate because it always happens that something that didn't jump out at you, you know, you may see later and say, wow, that's good.
Mm.
And it's inevitable that the things you think are great when you're out there in the field, you see them on the screen, you're like, oh man, what a bunch of crap. And
Why did I?
it's exactly like, what the hell was I thinking? Or there's a mosquito in the middle of the frame or something like that. All the ones you think are great rarely are as great as you think they are, but it's the ones that you just kind of sit with and let the details come alive, and then those are the ones that tend to be really good photos. Like, I don't know if you saw, I got the runner-up photo for the intimate landscapes,
Yep.
the Natural Landscape Photography Awards. That photo didn't jump out at me. That was not the one I liked. I'd been shooting a bunch that looked like there were a lot of green clouds, and I shot one that looked like a volcano, and I was so excited, and it was a bunch of crap. And I shot a bunch of interesting rocks. I thought, and that was crap too. And then I'm like, huh, the rock one's kind of cool. I think it was probably a couple months after I shot it. I'm like, huh, let me see what I can do with this. I'm like, oh, hey, that kind of works. So I sent it off, and I had a feeling it would do well, but not that well. I was really amazed when it came back, like, oh, you're the runner up. Like, holy shit, really? But that was not one of my favorite shots. That was kind of like just me goofing off, like, okay. And the shots that I thought were going to be spectacular are a bunch of crap.
Yeah, wow. Yeah,
So
it's amazing sometimes those B-roll or whatever you want to call them, you kind of go, you come back to sometimes and they're actually much better than as you say, the big wow shot that you thought you had.
yeah, yeah. And now when something spectacular happens, like a double rainbow, like for that one, I immediately went to a coffee shop, and like I put it in the laptop and like, please work out. Oh God, please work out, because it is more often than not, it does not. So
Yeah.
that was one of the rare exceptions. Like, oh my God, thank God it works.
Mm.
But the ones that you rush back for, it's like, oh,
So are you a details person in your processing, or are you more about just the general vibe of the image?
general vibe. It's more like, it's like, okay, what, first, like, where did I screw up? What do I need to correct? Try and find those first, and then just kind of sit back and just kind of let the photo process itself. I try and keep them natural, because Arizona Highways, is a travel magazine. They want to show
Yeah.
Arizona, so you can't be creative and swap out skies and and switch colors. They want to see what it looks like. So what Arizona looks like. So I
Yeah, it
don't
has
do.
to be more journalistic in
Yeah,
style.
it has to be journalistic. I mean, like, if you blend two shots together, you have to declare you did that, even
Yeah,
though you didn't change a thing. You just did this. You have to declare it's two shots blended.
yeah.
Um, But I generally just like just get the shot to show how it looked when I was there, but also how it felt when I was there.
Sure.
And some are easier than others. Some I can't make work. Showing how it felt to be there was really, really hard. And that's
Yeah.
the hardest part, I think. So, but that's kind of my goal when I'm processing.
Printing, I'm interested in a couple of things here. One is, do you print for yourself? Do you print anything? Sorry, I meant to say, do you print yourself or do you leave it to the experts?
I leave
And
to the experts.
and I'm really interested in some tips and guidance for people that might want to get their stuff into magazines. What sort of approach have they got to take to making, aside from the journalistic style of
Yeah.
this is what is there, not necessarily, adding rainbows and unicorns and things like that.
Right, right. One of the classes I took when I was taking classes to learn photography was a printing class. It was good to know because now I know how it works and I know the adjustments I need to make. So that was helpful. And that also, the printing class taught me that I don't want to print. It's very technical. I'm not technical. I can barely use my camera. So I
I'm
turned print.
technical and I don't like printing either.
Yeah, so but I know how to turn over a decent file so I doesn't come back with all these artifacts. I know not to save in JPEG and convert to a TIFF and then send it in. I know, so generally that works. As far as getting to a magazine, the advice I would give people is first look at the magazine you want to shoot for and see what they're looking for. You may not fit. And so rather than try and change how you do it, find where you fit. And I think that's the key for anything in photography. I mean, you need to find your niche. I mean, there are some people that, do great work, but they don't sell well in the gallery
Yeah.
because people just don't want to see that on their wall. Well, maybe they fit somewhere else. I like documentary style, printing, or photography, and I like being able to create what I want. So Arizona Highways is a good fit for me, and they like me too, fortunately. But I basically just find your niche. But if you want to, shoot for a magazine, the best thing to do is contact a photo editor and say, just say, hey,
What do
I
you
love
do?
your magazine. And, be familiar with it. Don't send out a bunch of AI emails saying, oh, I want to be there. They can tell it's not sincere. And then just that usually they ask for a sample and then you send it in and you may have to follow up, but basically just familiarize yourself with the magazine and what they need and see if you fit.
Yeah, yeah. I
So,
think that's great advice. The thing, I mean, I've been approached by magazines as well, and like yourself, it's kind of really pleasing when somebody comes along and says, "Hey, I like this image. Can I use it?"
yeah, yeah,
But it's also then you go, okay, well, yes, I know that magazine. I know what they're about. Making sure that what you're doing fits that can really
yeah,
help you along the way in getting into that sort of market.
yeah. And maybe you want to do editorial photography, so look,
Sure.
develop your style and then see out there who's interested in hiring you and likes that style
Yeah.
and approach them. And I would say be persistent, not annoyingly persistent, but friendly persistence.
Don't take
Like,
no, the first no for the
well,
only answer.
well, if they really don't want you, then don't be a pest. But like, for
Yeah.
example,
I
I
know exactly where you're coming from.
yeah, like the first, like I approached Jeff, the editor of Arizona Highways. I said, may I send you some photos? He said, sure. And I sent them in, and I'm nervous as hell. And I get no response for like 3 weeks. I'm like, oh shit, I hate this. I hate this follow up stuff. But I happened to be in Arizona, took a decent sunset photo. So 3 weeks later, I reach out again, include the sunset photo, and say, "Hey, just following up on the photos. By the way, here's a photo I took yesterday." This time he wrote back the next day and said, "Oh, sorry, I've been busy, but yeah, that looks great. Sure, send photos." And like, okay. If I hadn't followed up, I might have gotten lost in his massive mailbox.
Yeah,
But just be friendly, not annoying. You know what I mean? If they
exactly.
say no, go away, okay, then go away, go find somewhere else. So you just gotta feel it out.
Have you ever struggled with inspiration in your photography and
Heck yeah. I'm
How do
doing it
you
right.
how do you
I'm
get
doing it
around?
right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much every year, there's several times a year. I'm like, oh God, yeah, I want to photograph, but there's nothing I want to photograph. I can't get my camera out. I'm a big Rick Rubin fan. I love
Mhm.
his philosophy on creativity and such. And in general, I try not to force it if I'm not feeling it, but sometimes you need to. And
Yeah.
his advice is, a lot of times when you're struggling, you're hating the outcome or you're not feeling anything. He says, forget that. You have no control over that. Make it a devotional practice. You're going to go out with your camera and you're just going to walk on a trail, and maybe something will be there, maybe something won't. Make it a practice of just going out hiking and being open to what's there. You don't have to take a
Yeah.
photo, or if you do, just create for the pleasure of it or to have fun, goof off, forget if it's good or not. I mean, just let that go. And
Mhm.
that's where the good photographs will come from, is when because you have no control over the outcome. All you can do is you know create. So just make it playful, make it fun, take all the expectations out of it. Expectations are the death of creativity. Just let it go and make it a practice of enjoying and going out and seeing what happens.
Yeah. Sounds good. What do you see as photography's place in society?
Oh my gosh, photography in general.
Yeah, well, landscape photography in particular, but photography in general.
I'm gonna have to think on that one. The first thing that comes to mind is, conservation, especially now when we have, state of climate change in the earth. You have people who are denying that it's happening. It's like, okay, then we need some photographs to knock these people over the head.
Yeah,
But also you can, inspire people to protect places by showing them, how beautiful it is. You can show change, you can show destruction, you can just show so much. I think photography also is a method of preservation too, because if an area is destroyed and new people come along, they're not going to remember what it used to look like. So we I don't know if you're familiar with Glen Canyon here in
I've
northern
heard of
Arizona.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, it was beautiful. It's now a reservoir.
yeah.
And, there's the photos that were taken there, have inspired people to say, hey, wait a minute, maybe we need to drain this reservoir. Do we need it? And bring back the canyon. I mean,
Mm.
it's so if that's kind of where I see photography's place, is showing us what has been lost, showing us what we have, creating inspiration to preserve places, and maybe bringing these places to people who maybe can't get there. Maybe they don't have the means to. Maybe someone on the other side of the world can't, is in a wheelchair, and they see these amazing places in Arizona if they go on my website,
Yeah, yeah.
and maybe that will, enhance their life in some way. I don't,
What do you think is the future of photography?
another one I have to think about. There's a lot of discussion about AI. I don't see it as replacing photography in the sense that I was just talking about, where it's like landscape photography, showing a place, and showing how it used to look, showing what it looks
Yeah,
now, showing the destruction, because that's real. I mean, a lot of AI, like for selling you a couch in an IKEA catalog, I have no problem with that being AI. Like,
sure.
couch is a couch. So the future, I think the landscape photography is there's still going to be a place for it, because landscape is constantly changing, man-made or otherwise. And AI doesn't recreate that. It can recreate a landscape, but not this one area, maybe where I want to show what it looks like, what's happening to it, what did it used to look like. So
What's your favorite thing about being a photographer?
just be able to the creativity. Landscape photography, you're if you're in doing documentary style, you're limited to what's in front of you. So it's not like you can move things around, but it sort of makes you get more creative, because you say, okay, here's the scene. I can move myself around. I can look at it from up. I can look at it from below. How can I see this differently in front of me? And I think creatively that maybe only I would see. So,
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to get you to do that again because I was getting quite a lot of stuttering in the video then.
oh, okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, I just got a note saying your connection is unstable, but it looks pretty stable.
Yeah.
So you asked me what was my favorite part? Because in landscape photography, you can't really move the scene around, but you can move yourself and you can say, well, how can I see this differently
Sure.
than someone standing here right would see? You can see it from above, you can see it from below, you can get real close and challenging myself to see it in a way that maybe only I can see. So
Mm.
that's kind of my favorite part.
What about your least favorite part?
My tripod. I hate tripods.
Okay.
I would love to be able to shoot a long exposure without a tripod. I just can't stand that thing. But it's necessary for a lot of things. And the funny thing is, in Arizona highways, I've had about a little over 20 shots in the magazine. The vast majority were not shot on a tripod. So a lot of my photography, I go out, I try and do things right. I put a camera on a tripod, figure out the hyperfocal distance, get a good exposure, blah blah blah. And then I get bored after that and start goofing off. And a lot of those shots are handheld. And
Yeah.
those are the shots that make the magazine the vast majority of time. Just when I'm just saying, what if I do this with a really wide aperture? What's it gonna look like? And that's the one they'll pick. And all my double rainbow, they have it. They haven't used it. They may never use it. But it's in the gallery, so that's okay. But they always pick the ones where I'm just goofing off, which is interesting.
Fantastic.
But yeah, no tripod. Well, the vast majority of the shots in the magazine, including I've had two covers. They're both handheld shots.
Wow. What do you like to do when you're not out shooting?
Mountain biking. Flagstaff is sort of an all-season outdoor place. So I mean, it's mountain biking, yoga, skiing. I mean, hiking, anything that's outdoors. I am outdoors.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's the best and or worst piece of advice anyone's ever given you?
About geography in general.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, worst advice. When I was younger and just learning, I don't know if this happens to men. It happens to a lot of women. I mean, you get these kind of older male photographers that maybe way past their prime, kind of slithering in saying, "Oh, I can help you, but you need to do this." "Oh, I'm this big shot, but I can help you make it big, but you need to do that." So the worst piece of advice I got was from the slithering lizard who told me, "You're pretty talented, but you need to stop shooting the Southwest because it's already been done."
Wow.
So here I am, being 25% of my income so far shooting the Southwest. That is hands down the worst advice I ever got. And I didn't take it. I just blocked that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Best advice. Let me think. I mean, I've had a lot of really good advice. Nothing really leaps out. I would say the best advice I can think of is just basically shoot what you love, and pursue that, as deeply as you can.
I think that's great advice.
That's the advice I'd give myself if I were, talking to someone like, me way back when.
Yeah. We're going to have to wrap up shortly, so I've only got a
Okay.
couple of questions for you. Are there any photographers out there that you think should be on the podcast?
Sure. Two I know, one I don't, but she's really interesting. The person that I reached out to and they haven't gotten back to me. Her name is Tayana Arviso, and I
Okay.
can email you that. She's a Diné Navajo photographer,
Wow.
and I see her on Instagram, and her style is really unique. And she really shows her heritage, but she's not shooting your typical landscape where you've got the foreground, you've got the good light. I mean, she shoots basically you can see it's from the heart. So I
Yeah.
emailed her, or I sent her a message and said, "Would you like to be on the show?" And she hasn't gotten back to me, but if you might try reaching out. She's really
Definitely.
interesting. Another photographer is another artist I work with named Sailor League Darling. And Sailor, I thought of because you see a lot of guys out, doing all this backcountry scrambling and taking photos. Sailor is non-binary, so they don't identify as male or female, but they're definitely not a guy. But
Yep.
Sailor goes out and crawls through the Grand Canyon solo, climbing rocks, all these out of the way places. So they might have some interesting stories to tell. And the last person is a photographer from Arizona Highways named Jeff Maltzman. He specializes in intimate landscapes. When Arizona Highways had its updated best photos ever in the magazine, he had a photo in there. And the
Nice.
interesting thing is he's an eye surgeon. So I don't
Oh,
know if he has any insights in photography, but I think that's a very interesting fact about him. So
Yeah, no, definitely sounds interesting. Thanks for those.
yeah, sure. So I'll email you the names and contacts, and Sailor and Jeff say yes, they'd love to be on the show. Tiana, we'll just have to give it a shot.
Fantastic. Thanks, Laura. I've only got one more question
All
for
right,
you, and it's one that I've been trying to get
sure.
to the bottom of since the beginning of the podcast. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
I do. I do with pepperoni.
Sounds good. I like
But
the sound.
do you like pineapple on pizza?
I won't necessarily order it. I'm fairly neutral, but if it's there, I'm not picking it off. I'm going to eat it.
You're flexible.
That's it.
Okay.
All right, Laura, it's been really wonderful talking to you today, and thank you so much for sharing your time and stories with us. Where can
Oh,
people
my
find your
pleasure.
work?
Pardon me?
Where can people find your
I mean,
work?
probably Beth is on my website, which is just if you Google my name, one interesting fact about me is I am the only Laura Zirino in the world. So if you Google my name,
Wow.
that's me. Yes, it will all come up me. So my website comes up. But make sure, thank you, Grant, for reaching out to me. And, I'm glad you found me and, I had a blast doing this.
Yeah, thank you so much. So did I. It was really good meeting you.
Also, great meeting you.
Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work and this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com. I'm also on Vero, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. And for those that are looking for me on Twitter, I'm no longer there because the owner is a Nazi. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm Grant Swinburne, and I hope to see you out shooting soon.